Before I begin this morning, I want to acknowledge that the sermon began with a thought from Anna, submitted for 2-Bit Bible Study, where she reflected on physical distancing of lepers in relation to Jesus through that healing story. Once, Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, and Jesus answered, "The kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, 'Look, here it is,' or 'there it is,' for in fact, the kingdom of God is among us." These words from the Gospel of Luke follow the story of the lepers being healed. The word provides a lens to help direct our reflection on the story. God is not coming with things that can be observed. In fact, the kingdom of God is among us. Back in late March and early April, would the first words on our lips have been that the kingdom of God is among us? I don't think so. I remember the early days of COVID as peculiar. Every day I went for a walk, an adventure filled with new rules, navigating away from other people, moving to the road, watching for cars, choosing routes with less people, turning one's head if one couldn't distance, refraining from touching crosswalk buttons, being careful not to sneeze or cough, not greeting others to avoid contagion, being anxious or wary of what might be or who might be a virus carrier, wondering if the air was okay or if one had to distance from dogs or cats. There was a whole mess of feelings. Walking was no longer a leisurely exercise, no longer a time to greet neighbors, and no longer a communion with creation. Perhaps for the first time in my life, I have a sense of the mess of feelings experienced in first-century Judea related to leprosy. Lepers lived in colonies, communities outside of inhabited areas in inhospitable places. They were sent away because leprosy is contagious. Although still not knowing exactly how the disease is transmitted, until recently it was treated as a disease passed via physical touch. Those in leper colonies relied on friends, family, or others who would leave food or other items at the fringe of the encampment. From time to time, lepers would leave the colony in groups, like the 10 we read about this morning, to gather alms and to scavenge resources. There are stories that lepers carried items with which to make noise, in some periods of history wearing bells, to warn people of their presence and to make people move away. Physical distancing was the practice. Lepers were not to approach the healthy. The healthy avoided contact with lepers. In this story, we are told that the lepers approached Jesus, keeping their distance. They called to Jesus, and from a distance, Jesus answered back. No touching involved. Healing happened somewhere in the space between Jesus and the lepers. The kingdom came not in something observed. Jesus spoke words. Words are not seen. Words are rather heard. There was no outstretching of his hand in blessing or calling out to God or doves coming in the sky. No, just words spoken that said nothing at all about the healing. Just go show yourself to the priests, Jesus says. This is not an action easily done. It is not just going and seeing a priest. To see a priest would mean a ritual bath, admittance to the temple grounds, and an offering. Before going, to be permitted in the crowds of the city of Jerusalem would mean acquiring clothes to replace their leper rags. It would require the former lepers to integrate into societal ways of moving through the city streets to the Temple Mount, acting in ways that many of them had not done for a long, long time. the lepers were used to avoiding, not touching, not communing with people, and now to maneuver through the narrow streets that went up to the temple, unable to distance, they would be touched and jostled in the busy city. How overwhelming. To top it off, they could not return to their home because their home was now off limits. They now had to physically distance from the people they had been living with, physically distancing from all they had known, perhaps for years, for decades. I can't imagine. It is difficult just going for a walk now, where some people still distance, others do not. Some wear masks outside, others push through and cut one off or pass quickly. Can we touch? Do we retain our bubbles? Who is allowed in our homes, who is not? What church groups will start meeting face to face? When and where are we comfortable or not comfortable? Some days such circumstances are overwhelming and exhausting. Our current experience helps us understand a little more the story of the lepers and former lepers. Told to go show themselves to the priest, the lepers had to prepare and to think about it. Their minds, I imagine, were overwhelmed by the tasks required to do as Jesus said. I wonder how far along the journey it was before the first leper noticed that he was healed. This leper was one who would not be going to Jerusalem, as he was a Samaritan. The lepers had to walk past Samaria to get to Jerusalem. Perhaps it is here, on reaching what would be his place of reintegration into society, that he noticed he was healed. Perhaps the others were still overwhelmed and preoccupied, working out the to-dos of what would happen upon reaching Jerusalem. When the first leper noticed that he was healed, he returned and fell at Jesus' feet. This is certainly close proximity to another human being, and I imagine that it might have included even touching Jesus' feet, a sign of respect. That touch. Can you imagine reaching out to touch someone when you have not been allowed to touch another for a very long time? Those of us with parents or friends in nursing homes or hospitals who have not had physical contact with their loved one, when once again you can touch, in small measure, this is probably the leper's experience. This action, the feeling of another so close, might cause one to weep, to grieve what has been, giving the broken heart a chance to heal, and a simultaneous rush of fear and gratitude. God is not coming in things that can be observed. The kingdom of God is among us. Not coming in things observed. The kingdom of God is among you in physical distance, in words, in a returning of gratitude, in touch. Well, for us this year, in touch is keeping in touch, not actually touching. When I think of the physical distance between you and me, between me and you, too often I fret about what we cannot do. In doing so, I completely gloss over one of the messages in today's gospel. The kingdom is among us, in the space in between. Healing happened despite physical distance and was accompanied by the sound of words. Kingdom was present in the relationship, lepers to Jesus, Jesus to the lepers. This Thanksgiving, I have a newfound respect, joy, and gratitude for those things which I cannot see. This is Thanksgiving Sunday, and I am thankful that the gospel message is alive and in our midst. The kingdom of God has been, is, and will continue to be among us. With gratitude overflowing, I feel healing and experience relationship in that which cannot be observed. In all the ways relationship has been fostered, grown, and deepened in these times. in words that travel via Wi-Fi from smartphone to computer to files saved in the cloud to the wonder of Facebook Live and notes by email. In sharing the peace of Christ by looking into each other's eyes, bowing, nodding, waving. In celebrating communion with you, shared in words here, repeated in our homes, and eaten together, yet physically distanced. In feeling God, in moments of peace, in the heat of sunshine, in music that makes me cry, in poetry that sinks deep within, and in moments of a broken heart, when I am in touch with the raw pain of others throughout the world. For the things which cannot be observed, I give thanks, for therein is the kingdom of God among us. Once, Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, and Jesus answered, "The kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, 'Look, here it is,' or 'There it is,' for in fact, the kingdom of God is among you."